been to paradise?
Hey y'all and hola, I'm Silvia and you're listening to the Paradise City podcast where the grass is green. Observing a dark night sky is inherently magical and awe-inspiring. Under ideal viewing conditions, a spectacle awaits. All you need to do is look up. The night sky offers various spectacles, be it a full moon, a sky dotted with constellations, a shooting star, an eclipse, but it's more than just a visual feast. It sparks curiosity and wonder, stimulating learning about space. Astronomers strive to unravel these mysteries, while educational programs are making the latest space research and discoveries accessible, inviting the public to visit observatories and learn about astronomy. Our guests today are two remarkable individuals who illuminate the wonders of the cosmos through their unique yet complementary work in research and education. On this episode, Paradise is a starry night.
Have you ever been to paradise?
It's close to 9 p.m. on a chilly night in West Texas, and my co-producer Alejandro and I are on the road that gradually ascends into the Davis Mountains. Our endpoint is the globally renowned McDonald Observatory in Fort Davis, Texas, where we were to attend that evening's star party.
On behalf of the staff and residents of the observatory, I want to welcome you not only to McDonald Observatory, but also to the University of Texas at Austin. We are the research facility for the astronomy department at UT Austin. We consider you partners in our exploration of the night sky, and we are excited to have you here with us tonight. We know you have a lot of choices for things to do in Fort Davis on Saturday night.
This is Rachel Fuchel, the Public Programs Manager at the McDonald Observatory, welcoming that evening's crowd to the Visitor Center. We'll hear more from Rachel shortly. We are squeezed into an ash dome at the Rebecca Gale Telescope Park, located just outside the McDonald Observatory Visitor Center. Here, we are getting a close-up look at the telescopes housed inside the domes, which explains the noise. An astronomer is controlling the panels, whirring them from one side to another above me and my group to demonstrate how they usually open up the dome to use the telescope for their research. The McDonald Observatory is a research unit of the University of Texas at Austin and one of the world's leading centers for astronomical research, teaching, and public education and outreach. Observatory facilities are located atop Mount Locke and Mount Fowkes in the Davis Mountains, which offer some of the darkest night skies in the continental United States.
My name is Rachel Fuchel. I am the Programs Manager here at McDonald Observatory. McDonald Observatory got its start with the death of a wealthy banker named William J. McDonald. He passed away in 1926, and he left over $1 million to the University of Texas. His goal was for that money to be used to build an observatory, specifically for the study and the promotion of the science of astronomy. And so that has sort of been the kernel of our mission ever since, both the observatory and the visitor center, is sort of studying astronomy and then sharing what we learn. That's really our big mission.
On the day of the star party, Alejandro and I met with Rachel, a passionate advocate for making astronomy accessible to everyone, from seasoned stargazers to curious novices. Daytime and evening programs are dedicated to educating the public about astronomy and the scientific research that was or is being conducted with their state-of-the-art telescopes. The observatory continuously strives to evolve and expand its programs to include not only scientific content, but also the ways the public can engage with astronomical concepts and tools.
We're calling it Telescopes 101. So we get a lot of people that come here, locals as well as visitors from elsewhere, who come and they say, I just got a telescope and I don't know what to do with it. Or I'm really interested in using in getting a telescope. What advice do you have? Gives people a sort of hands-on experience with some telescopes maybe before they decide to buy, or teaches them how to point it so the thing that's sitting in their garage doesn't become a paperweight. Yeah, so that one I'm excited about. We're starting a workshop for people that want to do astrophotography, so kind of going beyond just sort of presenting the content and into an area where it's like, if you're interested in this hobby, this is how you can be involved. This is how you can do astronomy, which kind of gets back to that sort of idea that this is a welcome mat. It's everybody can access it, and you don't have to have a giant dome and a huge telescope to be involved in astronomy.
Do you have your own telescope?
I do. I don't use it that much because the ones at the visitor center are much bigger, and I can use those anytime I want.
One of the perks of the job.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's if I didn't have this job, I probably would be bragging about some 20-inch behemoth I have in my backyard. But I don't need to invest in that when I can do it here for free. One of the things that really drew me to the area was the dark sky. I also find the natural environment just has this stark beauty that really kind of resonates with me. And it was really exciting to me to be able to be in a place where discoveries are being made, where exploration is happening, and to be, kind of at ground zero for that kind of thing. I think the role of an observatory is twofold, obviously to do the science and to facilitate that learning at that level, but also I think it's really incumbent on us to share what is being learned with the broader public. It's astronomy. I see astronomy as sort of a welcome mat to science. The night sky is something that everybody can relate to, everybody can access to some degree, even if you're in a big city where there's a lot of light pollution. There are some stars you can see the moon, you can see the sun. So those things are accessible to everybody. I think everybody has a bit of a natural curiosity about those things, some to a greater degree than others, but our role really is to connect with people and provide them with the level of learning about that they want to get. We do get people from all over the world, and I think the thing that draws them here instead of other major observatory sites is our accessibility. We are, I think, the most accessible currently operating research facility in the world. It's very rare that you're going to find an observatory site that is going to take you onto the dome floor of a telescope that will be used later that night by a researcher. Usually those are kind of off limits, and so we're really proud to be able to bring people those experiences.
The answer to the question that brought us to chat with Rachel is always interesting. How did a passion for astronomy land her here in West Texas, leading programs that educate and excite the public about the night sky? According to Rachel, it was a non-linear path that consisted of making changes and connections to cultivate the job she finds joy in now.
I kind of got the broadcasting bug in college. I was on the college radio station, and I just really enjoyed that. And I thought, this is a lot of fun. I'm gonna try to pursue this, and I had some success in that area. I went more along the news route, and it was around 9/11, and then the Columbia disaster. I realized that talking about that kind of stuff and sharing that kind of stuff was just not me. You're trying to get information from people on sometimes the darkest day of their lives, and it just wasn't me. I couldn't do it. So, and around that time, I was volunteering and then also working part-time at the Adler Planetarium. I was just having the best time talking to people and connecting to people about this topic. It kind of rekindled what had become sort of a latent interest for a while, and I thought, I could take what I've learned as a broadcaster, and I can take what I've learned, or what I will learn in astronomy, and make a career out of that. So yeah, I was working at the planetarium before I went back to school, went to grad school, and right out of grad school came here. You can often get kind of wrapped up in the day-to-day of a particular job or career and maybe be vaguely aware that you're not satisfied, but not really taking action about it because you haven't made that full realization yet. And so I think once I realized that making that leap, okay, this is a fun job sometimes, but it's not fulfilling for me, understanding that. And then getting creative about what the next step would be. I really hadn't ever considered going back to school. I really hadn't, and I really didn't think, because I had kind of veered towards the humanities, I didn't think it was really possible to make the turn from broadcasting to astronomy. But then I did the work to figure out, is there a way? Am I just telling myself that there's no way to do it? Or maybe there really is. Just kind of not shooting yourself down before you get started. When I started researching the possibility, I wrote emails to the directors of astronomy departments across the country. I got responses that ranged from, people have tried this and it doesn't work, don't bother, to, hey, you should look into this program. And that happened to be the program at Wesleyan University where I went to grad school. And I reached out to them and they were super supportive. So that's the other thing is, kind of making connections and reaching out. I was cold calling astronomy department directors. I don't have any connection to these people, but they were, some of them, very responsive and helpful. So asking for that help, even if it's coming from an unlikely source or a source that you might feel uncomfortable reaching out to at first, is well worth it, because I would never have dreamed that there was a program like the one at Wesleyan that was kind of geared towards people that did not start out in astronomy. And that was perfect for me. And it just fell into place from there. So, yeah, making that realization, asking for help to make the change, not being afraid to make the change. And it's never too late to make the change, too. I was kind of like, gosh, for a while I kind of had this feeling like, gosh, I really wasted my college opportunities going this route that's not the direction I really want to go. What do? I can't go back and start over. Well, actually, you don't have to go back and start over. You turn the path. You take a turn in the road. And now, looking back, I realized that was not wasted time in college. That was absolutely essential to what I'm doing today.
We go even further back to when the spark for astronomy started for Rachel. Something she hasn't lost sight of, and in fact, it leads her to positively impact others with the level of knowledge and passion she has.
I've always been interested in astronomy and space travel for as long as I can remember. But the thing that really stands out in my memory as being kind of a catalyst for a deeper passion was in middle school. I had a teacher who just was really kind of connected with me, and we got to the space unit, and she had us go out every night and look at the moon and draw the moon and see where it was in the sky and all that. And that really got me hooked. And from there, I started trying to learn constellations. My parents got me a good pair of binoculars, and I was out every night looking, I can remember, I grew up outside Chicago, and I can remember being out in the winter outside Chicago, frigid, looking up at the sky, and then being like, hey, I found this thing, come out and look, and my parents would very kindly go along with that. But so I've just always been interested in it. And that teacher, actually, it's a funny story, when I was working at the Adler Planetarium in Chicago, that teacher came to a sky show, and I got to see her, and it was right before I started grad school for astronomy, and I was like, you really made this happen. So it was kind of a cool experience to get to see her again. So. Yeah, and I remember the first one, it was Orion, and it was just like, wow, oh my goodness, that's it. And then knowing that the nebula was the middle star, I'm like, oh wow, I can see that. It just really, it was kind of that rush, and it's a little bit addicting. It's like, oh, I'm gonna find another one now, and you just keep exploring and finding it. I think there's sort of a mystery about space, and it's sort of the unknown, and it's like making a discovery, sort of an adrenaline rush to discover that thing that's, it's new to me. And I think that was kind of part of the birth of a larger sort of fascination with exploration and learning. I was thinking thinking a lot about that sort of thing recently, and I think exploration is really a fascination of mine, and I think that's why I've always been really interested in the space program. I've always been really interested in going out and finding new things in the sky or in the world. So yeah, I think it's just evolved as I've been able to do more of it.
It took one wondrous night of looking up at the sky to see those stars transform into constellations right before Rachel's eyes. And that experience sparked the path she's on now. If you've witnessed an eclipse like the one that occurred in April 2024, or you plan to in your lifetime, if you've seen a show or a movie with space as the setting, if you've gone to an observatory, or if you've just stared at the moon, never the sun, through a telescope, maybe that was your wondrous moment that opened your world up to that beyond our planet and solar system.
One of my favorite things to do is the constellation tour at our star party. It kind of brings me back full circle, because that's where, learning the constellations is how I got my start. And there's some great stories that go along with the constellations that I love to tell. And it's just a lot of fun. I have a favorite that I tell from South African culture about, it connects Orion, Taurus, and Canis Major, the brightest stars in those constellations. And it's about a hunter who goes out and he goes out looking for food for his family, and he finds 3 zebras. Those 3 zebras are the belt stars of Orion. He takes a shot at them and he misses. Then he spots a lion, is represented by the star Betelgeuse in Orion. Basically, the lion spots the hunter, the zebra spots the lions and the hunter spots the lion, and none of them wants to go anywhere, so they're trapped up in the sky. So it's a fun story that now I've given away to everyone. So, giving away the punchline on that one.
In the time Rachel has managed programs, she has her share of experiences and takeaways from guests that have led to some profound, inspiring, fun interactions rooted in wonder. That is one of the perks of Rachel's job in connecting to the public. She gets to experience some interesting moments as people are experiencing them.
You'll get people that are, sometimes brought to tears by the view of something in a telescope. I've had people who have a profoundly religious experience at the telescope, and others who just get very, very excited. Kids especially. I remember one kid looked at, I think it was Saturn, and she got so excited. She came down from the ladder and she did this little dance, and so I started dancing with her, and then she hopped away saying, I saw Saturn. So it was just really, the exuberance that kids have at the eyepiece is just a lot of fun. When I started thinking about this, one of the more profound experiences I had was on a guided tour. I had finished the dome floor portion of the tour at the 107-inch telescope, and I noticed there were these 2 men in the back that were sort of huddled together, and it looked like one of them was crying. And I thought, my goodness, what is going on? So I walked over and I said, is everybody okay? And it turned out, there were 2 older men, it turned out that one of them was a Holocaust survivor, and the other was a GI who actually liberated the camp that man was interred in. And it was just this kind of connection, that just random connection that happened on the dome floor between 2 people that was so profound. And had nothing to do with astronomy, but it was just one of those things that astronomy brought them to the same place at the same time. And here they were. People do not expect the amount of stars that they see in a dark sky. Most people do not have access to one. They just live in a place where maybe they see a handful of stars, some a little better than that, but Most people are seeing a natural dark sky for the first time, and it was surprising to me at first that was a more profound takeaway for many people than a view through the telescope. It was very surprising to them that all this is up there. So that's probably both a common and this is somewhat surprising to me. Initially it was. I get it now for sure. I think that's probably the most common one. People get out of the experience to a large degree what they bring to it. They may come in with very profound religious beliefs or a lack thereof and find something in the sky that reinforces that inspires them in some way. Some will come in with some very odd ideas about aliens and other things. And they don't see the aliens on the tour. I want to be clear about that. We don't have any UFOs on site, but they do ask about it and they're very curious about it. And the most common question we get about that is, have you seen a UFO? And it's like, well, no, I've seen things that were a little bit odd, but had an explanation eventually. And the other question we get is, do we believe that there's life elsewhere? And that's a different question entirely. That's a broader question about the universe and are we alone? And you get some very good conversations with people about that. And oftentimes the next question will be, have you seen a UFO? But it's a lot of fun to answer that question because when you think about the vastness of the universe and all the stars and how now we think most stars have at least one planet, it's very likely that there's life out there somewhere.
The observatory has hosted thousands of visitors over its history. People from all over the globe who have felt a spark of intrigue or excitement as they've come to take in what they're seeing, maybe things they've never thought about or seen before. These experiences are made possible by the astronomers who connect with the public. At the start party, astronomers helped us use the telescope to see the moon. They explained how the telescopes in the domes operate, and they presented information on their research in an accessible, interactive format, encouraging us to ask questions. This really debunked the stereotype of scientists being isolated in labs. Instead, the reality is that astronomers are part of a global network of curious minds who value the power of community.
These are amazing things that we're learning and discovering and wanting to share them with others. I think you'll find most astronomers are very eager to do that. And they're all very passionate. We're all super enthusiastic and passionate about what we do. And it's hard not to be passionate about the sky, I think. Well, I'm biased, but everybody's got their thing, I suppose. But we work a lot with the astronomers at the University of Texas at Austin. They're a natural resource for us, being part of UT. They will often participate in our teacher workshops, so they'll be co-facilitators sometimes, or just give a talk during them. They're out here regularly doing talks for special events and things like that. And then, of course, they're a content resource for us, so we are always able to kind of reach out to them to get either guidance for special events, exhibits. They're able to participate in teacher workshops, sometimes student programs if they're out here. We'll have them sometimes on our live streams. So they're really partners in a lot of ways. It's a very strong bridge between what's happening on the research side and what people are able to access and understand and enjoy. So yeah, we're a key component in that. I think there's two reasons that bridge is important. One is a rather practical one, and that's funding. The more scientifically literate the public is, and the more enthusiastic they are about a particular science, the more likely funding is going to get where it needs to go. The other is getting more people involved in science, interested in science, especially kids who are the future generation of scientists and are going to make the next big discoveries. If we let that bridge deteriorate, we risk losing not only the science that's happening now, but the science that will happen in the future.
After the break, we will return to Austin city limits and traverse the bridge between science and education that Rachel mentioned. I will chat with an astronomer about the joys of his role and the exciting field that he works in. Stay tuned.
We work really hard to promote understanding of light pollution and its impacts on not just astronomy, but people's daily lives, the economy, health, wildlife, the environment. So that's a huge project that is very important for our community locally, but also globally, really. A lot of people move out to this area for the dark skies. And there are a lot of folks in the local community that have their own telescopes. Some have observatories in their backyard. It's a huge deal out here, to the point where we've been able to establish what is the largest dark sky reserve in the world. The dark sky at night is really a valuable part of the experience of living out here, and the people in the communities have embraced it. We've seen a shift from people who are kind of coming through the area anyway and stopping off at the observatory because it's a neat thing along the way, to folks who are specifically making a trip to the area because of the dark night sky and the observatory being able to provide an experience related to that.
Founded in 1988 as the International Dark Sky Association, Dark Sky is the globally recognized authority on light pollution and night sky conservancy. Since naming Flagstaff, Arizona, the first international dark sky city in 2001, Dark Sky has certified over 200 places worldwide. Today, more than 160,000 square kilometers of land and night skies across 22 countries on 6 continents are protected, and this number grows every year. Choosing dark sky certified lighting and supporting night sky conservation efforts can reduce light pollution and preserve the wonder of the night sky for future generations. You can join the global movement to protect your night skies, become an advocate, volunteer, or simply spread the word. To learn more and get involved, visit darksky.org. I'm attending Astronomy on Tap on a clear, cool spring night in Austin, Texas.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. So happy that you joined us. This is Astronomy on Tap. We're here, a bunch of astronomers, to talk to you about cool space stuff.
And drink beer.
Yeah, absolutely.
As part of a global network, Astronomy on Tap chapters host engaging, accessible presentations on space and science topics. Presenters usually hail from local research and educational institutions. And in the case of the Austin chapter, the majority of speakers are researchers and astronomers involved with the McDonald Observatory. This night featured a talk by Dr. Jed McKinney, a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Texas at Austin, where he led a talk titled Hidden Monsters: All the Galaxies Our Universe Doesn't Want You to See. Here's Dr. McKinney sharing an overview of his talk that leaves you intrigued.
There's so much gas and dust at the center of this galaxy that if you took it all and compressed it, it would be the equivalent of a meter-thick solid gold wall, which doesn't sound like a lot in like the spatial scales of space, but like this is space. It's supposed to be empty, and there's so much stuff here that trying to see the core of this galaxy is like trying to look through a meter of solid gold. Okay. So I hope you learned a lot today. I'm just going to leave my conclusion slide. These galaxies are monsters. The universe really did not want you to see them. It filled them with gas and dust. It blocked their light, and we had to build the most state-of-the-art, fancy, crazy, out-of-this-world telescope to ever see them in the first place. There's more of them than we thought possible, and they are massive, prolific factories of stars, totally changing the way we think galaxies grow. So thank you for your time, and I'll take some questions.
Yeah, let's give a hand for Christy.
Dr. McKinney and I chatted about his background and life as an astronomer. Like Rachel, I was curious about how someone finds their way into a role where exploring space is always at the top of their agenda.
My name is Jed McKinney. I'm an astronomer at UT, and I spend my days thinking about deep space and objects very, very far from Earth and how they change with time. And it's fascinating.
How existential does it get on a regular basis?
That's like one of the most common questions that I think astronomers get, right? Because we grapple with scales that are so much larger than our planet. We're talking about time scales far longer than the life of any one person. So in some sense, at first glance, right, it is existentially challenging, but we use numbers and we use tricks to make everything feel small and compressible. Basically, we divide everything by 10 as many times as we need to make it feel tractable, to make it feel like a small problem, not this like big existential scary one. So I would say the longer and longer that I've done this, the more normal it's felt. And part of that is these tools that we use to describe something in terms of, okay, well, how many Earths is it? That's a more tractable number than like how many kilograms, right?
Mhm.
Those are orders of magnitude different. But also you just get used to the concept. A lot of times, I'll speak for myself, but I think this is true for a lot of the people that I talk with, myself included, we're just nerds. We're just like little nerds trying to focus on these really interesting small problems that plug into these existential questions, certainly. How did the universe form? How do galaxies grow? What makes a star form? Right, really foundational problems in astronomy and physics, and ones that have that feel so big, but the day-to-day is more nitpicky, it's more nuanced. I'm not thinking about those larger things, I'm trying to get my software to work. So the problems kind of fluctuate. When we write grant proposals, things get really big and our lens really telescopes out, and it gives us that moment to think about the universe in that broad, expansive ways. And then we submit those proposals off and we wait to hear back, and we think more about the day-to-day challenges of our research, our work, our lives. For me, it all really started with a love for teaching. My summer job, the way I paid my way through college and whatever, is I was a sailing instructor. So I taught young kids how to sail boats. And what gave me so much joy was this one lesson in particular, where we would teach them that when you're on a sailboat, you're really not being pushed by the wind, you're being pulled by it. And that's because of a physical principle called Bernoulli's principle. And breaking down a high order physical concept to young kids as young as 8, and helping them understand the forces of nature that make moving through our world in fun and interesting ways possible really gave me a lot of joy. And that had always stuck with me. And in high school, I was trying to think about what to do more with sciences, but I wasn't really good at it. I almost failed high school physics, which obviously at first glance is not a good baby step along the career of an astrophysicist astronomer, but in college, so I was interested in space and astronomy just from reading science fiction, looking up at the night sky at my grandparents' house in Western Massachusetts. But because I hadn't really succeeded well in hard science courses, instead of taking physics 101, astronomy 101, I was taking these social science courses that were like the human spirit and the universe, that were about trying to understand our place in the universe as humans, and kind of doing that in parallel to building and developing literacy in astronomy topics.
Sounds more philosophical.
Totally. And that really spoke to me. And I was able to use that and latch onto it and use that as a reason to work really hard on the classes that had previously been really challenging to me and get to where I am today.
As someone who enjoyed sparking the joy of learning in others since his days of teaching sailing, Dr. McKinney has continued to be a highly engaged and enthusiastic educator in the field of astronomy. He knows that once the seed is planted, it can inspire new astronomers to bring their innovative ideas and diverse perspectives, enriching research and initiatives.
I have the opportunity to work with undergraduates. I've done that throughout my whole career. I did my PhD at UMass, and I would go into classrooms and I would talk to freshmen who are bright-eyed freshmen taking whatever class, and I would tell them about astronomy. And one of those students, their eyes lit up, and they decided to do their undergraduate major in astronomy, and they wrote a thesis with my PhD advisor. Now they're a graduate student at University of Arizona in astrophysics, getting their PhD, and I'm flying her out to Austin to do research with me. I mean, from sparking someone's imagination to following them and really having them as like a collaborator, I'm starting to experience that for the first time, and it's profound, because you change someone's life. You show them a possibility, a way the universe works. You make them think about space in some way, and maybe that captures them in a way that motivates them to pursue a PhD, because it's a long and hard process. It's not something to be done lightly, but it's incredible, and it's an amazing process, and it's kind of scary. It's like scary having that responsibility of like inspiring people and them wanting to, go get their own PhD and spend 6 years figuring things out. But it's also so cool. I think education for education's sake, and just people being able to think about whatever inspires them, is one of the most special things that we can do with our lives. Now, astronomy, English, dance, art, anything, right? Like my wish is to have this like world where anyone can just dig into any interesting question that just fascinates them and grabs them. And I wish we had the economic structures to make that possible and make that feasible all the time, because it's profound. I had a student come to UT this summer. Her name's Elaine Gammon. Hi, Lainey. She's awesome. And she would had never, this was like one of her first big astronomy research projects, and she knocked it out of the park, is doing amazing. She's applying to graduate schools. But she, early on in the program, she had been at UT for like 2 weeks. We're like just getting started with the process, and the folks at the McDonald Observatory out in West Texas reached out to me because they wanted to do an interview with for like a local TV station out in West Texas. And I did the interview, and during the interview I'm talking about my student, and the news anchor is like, "Oh, I want to interview your student." So I go to my student who's only been doing astronomy research for like 2 weeks. I'm like, "Hey, do you want to do like a TV interview about why you think science is cool?" And she was like, "Yes, obviously." And I got to watch her go through that process, and it was like the coolest thing ever. So yeah, it's really special to be inspiring like those people and uplifting them into their own careers.
As Dr. McKinney attests, it's an exciting time in astronomy. At the University of Texas at Austin's astronomy department, he finds himself in a hotbed of activity. This excitement and energy extends far beyond UT Austin, connecting a global community united by the exploration of deep space.
Sort of a special time in astronomy because the James Webb Space Telescope launched, and that has been, that's the culmination of over 20 years of planning and efforts by NASA and other institutions, and it's changing the way we see and think about the universe in profound ways. And there's a lot of action and there's a lot of energy because of that telescope, and leading to new ideas, and a lot of it's happening at UT. So it's been a really exciting, way to kind of start my career as an astronomer. I don't think it's a unique thing to astronomy in this ability to handle interesting questions and think about challenges and think about things that move us. So what really makes astronomy special for me is the people that I get to work with on a daily basis. And I get to, some of the most interesting people I've ever met, people who I deeply respect, my friends, my family. And I just feel really lucky to have kind of fallen into that at UT. We're all kind of bound together by this central pursuit of these ideas and answering these questions about the universe. Then there's the small side, the reason why I, go next door to one of my best friends' office, Ariana Long. She's a postdoc at UT as well. I'll knock on her door and talk about some small problem that's tiny and not connected to these larger questions, but we're, like you said, we're kind of connected by those bigger things as well. It's being able to, connect with people around this mutual shared passion, but also find so much language within that about why we're in this together, what makes that special. The astronomy community is it's international. it's incredibly diverse. I mean, people come into astronomy from all walks of life, from all countries around the globe, and so it's just exciting to learn about people that share your passions but come from a totally different experience and share in that and use that difference and celebrate those differences to help answer these questions that we need different perspectives on. I think I had the best week of my life like 2 weeks ago professionally. The James Webb Space Telescope was actively observing my program, so I was like controlling it, kind of, which was a surreal experience. I heard back on like a very competitive fellowship that I've been awarded, which opens up new doors for me and came with a lot of financial freedom that I haven't really felt in a long time. So that was really amazing news.
Oh, congrats.
And thank you. And I'm doing this all with the people that I want to do it with. NASA right now is competing a $1 billion program to build a space telescope. So they're saying, all you teams out there, send us your ideas for a space telescope that will cost up to $1 billion, and we'll pick the best one and we'll make it happen. And being able to think about what goes into a telescope, why you build a telescope, and how to convince NASA to spend $1 billion of taxpayer money on this science idea has been a really incredible process, and I think it's an ultimate career goal of mine to like be a part of that and see a telescope built on the ground, strap it to a rocket, blast it off into space, point it into the distant sky, and see what we see.
Earlier in the episode, Rachel discussed the collaboration between astronomers dedicated to their research and teams like hers at the McDonald Observatory, who design educational public programs. Both Rachel and Dr. McKinney are instrumental in reshaping the public's perception of an astronomer's daily life and making astronomy more accessible to everyone interested in the subject.
When people ask me what I do, I'm like, oh, I'm an astronomer. I used to not say that, by the way. I used to say I'm just a scientist because sometimes people don't really want to know and they just want to move on in the party or whatever. But now I'm trying to own where I am in life a little more. So I tell people I'm an astronomer, and the most common response to that is, oh my God, you're a genius. I could never do that. And it's so not true. Like, it really makes me feel bad because I don't feel like, it makes me feel so othered, right? Like we're like some people in our high towers scribbling away at equations, distant from the common person, which is so not the case. And I think also discourages people from thinking about these questions, which are accessible and simple. I mean, physics and astronomy are built on simple questions, right? Like, why did that apple fall on my head? It's not a profound problem, but it's one that had immediate consequences and sparked hundreds of years of physics and astronomy. So when people say that, I really try to like break that down and try to say what I'm doing isn't complicated. I've devoted a large part of my life to it, just like you might have devoted your life to what you do in your career. But that's not something that's necessarily I'm not built or born special. It's just I was stubborn enough to stick around with this for long enough.
Towards the end of both interviews, I ask our guests the pivotal question, what's your paradise? For the last time, here's Rachel and Dr. McKinney.
That's probably what drove me to what I'm doing now, sort of this desire to explore and learn. Going on a trip brings me a lot of personal joy, but also getting to explore every night. I get to go out and look at the night sky and sometimes see some very new things that I maybe haven't seen before or don't get to see a lot. The eclipse was a great example. I mean, seeing that, I'd seen one before, but each one is different. It just really resonated with me, brought me a lot of joy, and I was seeing it as part of a work event. So I was not only getting to explore it, but I was getting to share that exploration with others. So that really, I think, is the purpose of what I do. Really brings me a lot of fulfillment.
My cheeky answer is my cats. I have two. That's not the real answer. The joy and purpose is exactly that. It's the community of people that we do this with, because science doesn't happen in a vacuum. I think there's this weird mythology about science where you need to have these like hard-edged empirical people. We're told to write papers and to remove ourselves from them, right? The scientist shouldn't dictate the science kind of mentality, but that's just not true. We are all complex people, and we bring to science our own baggage and the unique ways that we see the world, and that's so special. And just being committed to this lifelong journey of answering questions, but doing it with fascinating people and learning with your best friends and making science with them and talking about the universe, but also talking each other through life is profound.
Have you ever been to paradise?
Thank you to Rachel Fuchel and Dr. Jed McKinney for sharing their stories on this episode of the Paradise City podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating, subscribe, and follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. The social media info and websites for the McDonald Observatory, Astronomy on Tap, and the Dark Sky Initiative can be found in the show notes. For more information about the podcast, visit paradisecitypodcast.com and follow us on Instagram, X, and Patreon. I'm Silvia. Thank you for listening. Until next time.
Have you ever been to paradise?